Good morning, everyone. Welcome to a new edition of Artsbeat here on Westfield Community Programming, 89.5 FM, WSKB, and our media partners at Agawam Media and Southwick Community Television. I'm your host, Mark Auerbach, and with me today is Rodney Rock from the Joergensen Center for the Performing Arts at the University of Connecticut in Storrs. Rod has been here at least twice a year to talk about the programming that's happening at UConn at Joergensen. And Joergensen, unlike some of the other theaters in the area, splits up its season into its fall programming and its winter-spring programming. So we had a chance to chat with Rod last fall about the fall programs, and now they've announced their spring programs or winter-spring. So first of all, Happy New Year to you, Rod, and share with us some of the highlights of the upcoming season.
Good morning, Mark. Thank you very much for having me on your program. And Happy New Year to you and to all of your listeners as well. We're excited, very excited about our spring 2025 season. Historically, typically, Joergensen is a multidisciplinary presenting program. Part of the key to our success is that our programs, we don't just appeal to one basic audience. We appeal to multiple audiences, folks that are interested in various types of entertainment and so forth. And we continue with that format today because it seems to work for us just fine out here in the hills of eastern Connecticut that is not as populated as other parts of the state. So I guess the first thing I would want to tell you about is we kicked the season off on Sunday, January 26th with a grand celebration. And it truly is a grand celebration. We have spent the last 12 to 18 months raising money for a new Steinway Model D concert grand piano. We were successful in doing that. We selected a new piano back in October. And on Sunday, the 26th of January, we will premiere that new concert grand on our stage in a performance featuring pianist Angelina Gedalia and members of a chamber ensemble or an artist collective from New York City called Dakota. Angelina Gedalia is a Ukrainian-American pianist. She's critically acclaimed really internationally for her work as a soloist, a recitalist, and as a chamber musician. And fortunately, she's also on faculty here at UConn in the Department of Music. She heads up the piano program. And so we're very fortunate. Angelina was involved in the selection process. And so it only seemed appropriate that we invite her to help us in this premiere process on the 26th of January at 3 o'clock. It is free admission to the general public. This is the first event in our Leonard Chamber Music Series for the spring of 25. And we're so grateful to the Leonard family for establishing that chamber music endowment. And so we want to turn this into a big celebration, so we are offering free tickets for this first event of the season, and it's got a very special plan with the premiere of that new piano.
How does somebody go about buying a new piano?
Well, it's kind of an extended process. First of all, for us, what was most important is that we had the financial resources in place to purchase the piano. So we had a number of patrons who stepped up to be members of an honorary committee. They made leadership gifts, which netted us probably about half the cost of the piano. And then we had additional contributions coming in. We've sold named keys. We're going to be having a piano plaque created for the main lobby. We've had a number of patrons who have purchased named keys for $1,000 each. And then we worked closely with representatives from the Steinway factory in New York City. A year ago, we actually took a group of these donors down to the factory for a tour. And then we came back this October and went through the selection process. They basically have a selection room. They give you 5 or 6 pianos to choose from. And then you take 2 or 3 hours or however long it takes to try out each of those pianos and then determine which one you think best fits your needs.
So the piano wasn't
derived
customized for you, right?
Pardon me?
The piano wasn't customized for you. You got to select what they had already built.
Correct. That is correct. Right. Right. And there was some discussion along the way about, do we want a New York Steinway, or do we prefer to have perhaps consider a Hamburg Steinway made in Germany? And we did spend a fair amount of time on that discussion, but in the end, Hamburg Steinways, this is a generalization, I shouldn't even say this, but Hamburg Steinways are really wonderful for like smaller halls, European halls, which is where they are used a lot. They're used more and more in the US all the time, but the New York Steinway factory is known for creating pianos that are really appropriate for 2,000 seat halls or larger. And that's what we were looking for. We were looking for a piano that certainly has the ability to play subtly, but we also wanted a piano that could fill our space. Oftentimes over maybe a 60 or 80 piece orchestra performing with a large ensemble like that, you need a piano that can fill the space when you need it. And so we were very fortunate. I think we were able to find a piano that works just great for Joergensen.
And then you have the whole logistics of moving the piano from New York to Joergensen and having it tuned locally and set up. It's pretty much a big undertaking.
Oh, it's a huge undertaking. And actually, our Steinway went from New York City up to Steinert's in Boston, where they did some voicing and other work on that piano up there. And then it was delivered to Joergensen right before Christmas, right before we closed on Christmas. I think we closed for the holidays on the 20th, and it was delivered on the 19th. And then there will be some additional work that's going to be done with that piano in our space starting on the 15th of January in preparation for that concert on the 26th. So we're really excited about it.
So I'm sure there's a sign on that new piano that says hands off. So somebody wandering around the theater can't just go in and play chopsticks or something on it.
Well, no, yeah. It's we haven't had to worry about that over the past 2 weeks since we were closed for the holidays. But the piano is we do have a storage cabinet for our pianos. And we're going to basically, we have to move the piano into that area. We have the Connecticut Music Education Association event coming up next weekend. They will not be using that piano. They'll be using one of our other Steinway Model Ds. So the first time people will have the chance to hear this new piano is on the 26th of January at 3 p.m.
How many pianos do you have, or will you have when the new one is up and running?
We have a total of 3 Steinway Model Ds in the building. One remains permanently on the lower level of Joergensen in the lower lobby, and it is occasionally used in the gallery, or maybe for an event in the lower lobby or the gallery. We keep 2 up on the main stage because I think the best halls in the country have the opportunity to offer touring artists an option when they come and they need a piano for a solo recital or for a performance with an orchestra. We try to give our touring artists an option of which pianos they would like to use. And it's based on taste and the program that they're going to perform and so forth. One of our Model Ds is a little more on the lighter weight side, maybe a little bit more appropriate for chamber music. And then if you've got a soloist coming in with a big Tchaikovsky or a Rachmaninoff piano concerto, we have this new piano, which is a little bit more, it's a meatier sound, larger sound.
Is Joergensen the only performing arts venue around that has multiple Steinways?
Oh, no, not at all. No. I can't really speak for any other venues in the state of Connecticut, but no, it is generally acceptable for venues like Joergensen to have at least 2 concert grand pianos. that artists have the opportunity to then come in and select which one they'd like to use when they're performing in that space. So it's not that atypical at all.
So once this new piano is premiered at the end of the month, how many times will it get used during this winter spring season?
Oh gosh, that's a good question. Um, we will need it one probably 6 times throughout the semester. This coming semester it will be used, or they'll artists will have the option of using it if they choose to use it for a various performance. And and of course you know we've got jazz at Lincoln Center coming back with a New Orleans songbook program. Um, the Alliage Quintet from Germany it's a saxophone quintet who performs with the pianist. Um, no, the Czech National Symphony also will be using it. So I would say between Joergensen events and then we will be doing a major UConn Department of Music Spectrum concert in very late April. It'll be used for that performance as well.
What are some of the other highlights of the upcoming season?
Well, you know, um, like I said earlier, we're so very grateful to have that in Leonard Chamber Music endowed series. And I'm really excited about the other events. We have a total of 5 chamber music events in that series for the spring. On February 11th, we have a very talented German baritone by the name of Holger Falk, who is known for his work in contemporary opera as well as recitals. He's going to be joined by a Baroque chamber ensemble from Cologne called Nuovo Aspetto, and they're going to be performing a program called Il Gondoliere Veneziano, which is basically um, Venetian gondolier songs performed with appropriate period instruments by the chamber ensemble, and then that whole program is going to be augmented with a soundscape that was created by some acoustical artists from Germany that go by the name of Merzoga. And basically, they're going to be performing the barcarolles, these songs that Venetian gondoliers would have sung in the 18th and 19th century. And it's augmented by this recorded soundscape of the sounds of Venice, what people would hear as they're being traveled down the canals in Venice. So it's a very interesting program. We have the Escher Quartet coming back in March. We have, oh gosh, the Alliage Quintet on April 1st. And then we have Chanticleer coming on April 9th. Chanticleer, of course, is the Grammy Award winning all male vocal ensemble from San Francisco. And what's really exciting for us this year, this will be, I think, their second appearance at Joergensen, maybe in a 20-year period. But recently, a UConn alumnus, his name is Jared Gravely, who got his degree in music here at UConn, is the newest member of that ensemble. So we've got master classes planned with the ensemble as well as I'm really excited to welcome Jared back. He did perform on the Joergensen stage during his time here at UConn because he was a member of some of the a cappella groups on campus, and so it'll be nice to welcome Jared back to Joergensen. We've got I had mentioned earlier about Jazz at Lincoln Center will be coming back in February with their New Orleans songbook program, which we're all very saddened to hear about what happened in New Orleans this past weekend. We wish all those folks the best. We keep them in our prayers, but this will be a really fine program featuring some rising stars in the jazz field. We have on Todd Delaney on this would be Friday the 31st of January. UConn always does a Martin Luther King Living Legacy concert at the end of January, early February. This year it takes place on the 31st of January, and it features a young up-and-coming contemporary gospel artist by the name of Todd Delaney, and he'll be joined by members of the UConn Voices of Freedom for a celebration and an observance of the Martin Luther King junior holiday. Um, we have a wonderful kind of a progressive, contemporary, but yet traditional Irish ensemble coming on Saturday, March 1st. The group is Goicha. It's called Goicha. It's spelled a little, it doesn't look like that's how you would say it at all, but it is pronounced Goicha. And they are a great combination of traditional Irish music combined with some original music that they have created themselves. Um, so it's a great way, very close. It's prior to St. Patrick's Day holiday in the country. So we're happy to have those folks. And then we have on April 27th, Preacher. Saturday, March 29th, we have a stand-up comedy show with Preacher Lawson and Asaph Alley. Preacher Lawson is a TikTok star, and he was also featured. He was one of the finalists on AGT a couple of years ago, and he's joined by Asaph Alley, who is kind of a comedy club grown comic, and he's actually doing some really fine work as an actor as well. So that's coming up at the end of April. On the 27th of March, we have Noam Pikelny coming. It's a program called Noam Pikelny and Friends. Does that name ring a bell for you, Mark?
I've heard the name, but I don't know much about the artist.
Noam Pikelny is a truly virtuosic banjo player. He has won lots of awards over the years, but he's probably best known right now as a member of Punch Brothers, plays banjo for Punch Brothers. He's also a member of a new, really fantastic bluegrass group called Mighty Poplar, which is a group that I've tried to get here recently, and that's not working out quite yet, but I hope to pursue that in the future and bring them back. Noam was here back in, I think it was 2013, with a little boutique touring show called New York Banjo. And he's just a fantastic virtuosic banjo player. And Joergensen has a real well, I personally have an affinity for American roots music and bluegrass and so forth. And so Punch Brothers has performed here probably 8 or 9 times over the years. We just had Molly Tuttle here a few years ago. We've had a number of bluegrass groups over the years. And so it'll be nice to bring Noam back on the 27th of March to give him sort of the showcase for the evening, because he does incredible work. And then also, I guess the last event for our spring semester will be Watch House, which is on Friday, April 11th. Are you familiar with Watch House?
No, I'm not.
This is a husband and wife duo. Andrew Marlin and Emily Frentz are married. They actually started performing together probably 12 years ago or so under the name of Mandolin Orange. And I think it was about 2013, 2014. I was just sort of surfing on YouTube one day, and I came across a cover of Mandolin Orange singing Bob Dylan's Boots of Spanish Leather. Fell in love with him right away. Immediately contacted an agent friend of mine who worked at that time for Monterey International and was like, have you heard of Mandolin Orange? She had, but they just really weren't quite ready to take it to the next touring level. So probably about 3 to 5 years ago, following COVID, they changed their name from Mandolin Orange to Watch House. And then that seemed to like switch the on button for some karmic reason. And now they have become central players in like major bluegrass festivals, folk festivals, the Newport Folk Festival, other folk festivals across the country. It's Americana, it's, American roots music, and they've got such a distinctive sound. So we're really excited to have them here on April 11th. And I think we're going to have a great audience for that evening. And then I guess the other thing I would just mention is everyone knows, you've probably all seen Wicked this past month or so in the movie theaters. So we thought we would jump on that bandwagon. We have Vital Theater Company will be coming with a children's version of Wicked. on April 6th. And probably of any event in the spring semester, that one is selling better than anything right now.
Well, Wicked is pretty big. I got to see the
Okay.
movie. I actually preferred the musical on stage to the movie. The movie's much expanded and all of that, but it is a great movie.
Oh, it's a great movie.
And you can rent it now or stream it, so you don't have to stand in line at a theater. Or in the case when we went to see it in the theater, the people around us were singing.
We're singing.
And you don't have to experience that, or you can experience it at home. We got to take a break to acknowledge our underwriters, but before we do, you can get ticket information and how to get to Joergensen, where to park, and all of that good stuff at their website, which is joergensen.uconn.edu. And I always throw in a plug. If you're going to see something at Joergensen, add some extra time because it's just around the corner from the UConn Dairy Bar, which is my favorite ice cream place in all of Connecticut.
It is indeed.
We're going to acknowledge our underwriters, so we'll be back with more Artsbeat. Peter Coles is our chief engineer. I'm Mark Auerbach. Don't go away.
Support for community radio on WSKB is provided by Betts Plumbing and Heating Supply Company, an independent, family-owned wholesaler serving Westfield for over 50 years, specializing in plumbing, heating, and industrial piping supplies. On the web at bettsplumbing.com or at 14 Coleman Avenue in Westfield.
Underwriting for the community programming of WSKB is provided by the Boys and Girls Club of Greater Westfield, serving the youth of the Whip City and surrounding communities since 1969. For more information on the Great Futures Club for ages 3 to 5, happening weekdays, and the Club Teen Center for ages 11 and older, weekdays from 6:30 till 8 p.m., go online at bcgwestfield.org or visit the club at 28 West Silver Street. The Boys and Girls Club of Greater Westfield. Great futures start here.
Hi, it's Bob Plass, and I have Wow, It's Tuesday, every Tuesday, 6 to 8. Wow, it's Tuesday.
Community Radio.
89.5 WSKB.
I did it!
Live from Studio 120 at Westfield Technical Academy, this is WCPC Channel 15 and 89.5 FM, WSKB Westfield.
Welcome back to Artsbeat, everyone. I'm your host, Mark Auerbach. Peter Coles is our chief engineer today. If you've missed a part of today's program, or you want to watch it again or share it with friends, it's archived on YouTube under WSKB Community Radio. It's archived along with all of our Artsbeat programming and my other two series, On the Mark and Survivor series. All of it's on archive, and you could stream it whenever you like. We're chatting with Rodney Rock from the Joergensen Center for the Performing Arts at UConn and Stores. If you go the back roads, it's maybe 45 minutes from Springfield, maybe a little bit longer from Westfield. Beautiful drive on the country roads. The University of Connecticut campus is quite fine. Plenty of parking around Joergensen, and there's a lot of restaurants that have cropped up in stores, so you can make a matinee or an evening trip down there. And there's an art museum at UConn, there's a puppetry museum at UConn, and you can make a day trip out of a performance at stores. Rod, I know that this month is the big convention in New York where a lot of the Performing Arts Center people go to shop around for their seasons for next year. And a lot of emerging arts groups do showcase performances and all of that. I would assume right now that you're in the process of booking 2025-26.
I am in the process of booking 25, 26, and 26, 27. The ABEP conference in New York City is always a great experience to have. We're kind of involved here at Joergensen in acquiring a new box office software system. So we're highly embroiled right now in the reviews of an RFP. So I will not be going to that conference this coming January, but we're never at a loss from phone calls or emails or text messages from the agents that I work with. So although I'm going to miss not going down there, for about 4 days, starting next week. But the conference is a great experience. It's a great way to see up and coming performances. You don't typically get to see a lot of established artists in showcases, but you get the opportunity to see a lot of up and coming artists. And then of course it's New York City, so you have the opportunity to see world famous dance companies and events at Carnegie Hall or at the Metropolitan Opera. So it's always a lot of fun to reconnect with friends and colleagues from across the country. And then, of course, in addition to that national conference, there are various regional conferences throughout the year as well. So there are a lot of opportunities.
Yeah, I noticed that in previous years, maybe 5 years ago, an artist or an ensemble would play at UMass at their Fine Arts Center one night, and at Joergensen either before it or afterwards, and then go up to University of Vermont. And there seemed to be big companies like Martha Graham that would play all the art centers on the university campuses. That seems to have stopped in post-pandemic. Is it more of a challenge now to get a big dance company like that or a big orchestra to come to stores? Or are you able to block book with other theater companies in the region?
Block booking is kind of an integral part of the professional presenting field. I think that in general, performing arts centers are still suffering. We're still in the process of rebuilding back from COVID. And I think that in general, not all of the venues the size of Joergensen here in the Northeast still present a lot of chamber music or orchestras, or sometimes not even dance companies. What I would say is, if a block booking opportunity comes up, we do work together to try to create a touring opportunity for the artists so that they can come into the region and then make a logical trip, from the southern part of New England all the way up to Orono, Maine, maybe over to Troy, New York, and places in between. But Michael Sakamoto over at UMass Amherst, we often do some of the similar events simply because we're both approximately 2,000 seat halls, and birds of a feather fly together. So we tend to be looking at the same types of events often.
You mentioned the pandemic and responding, coming back from that, which has changed the operation of many arts organizations, large and small, throughout the region. Have your audiences returned?
You know what? If we present something that's the Boston Pops we had back in December, sold out. We had Samara Joy back in December. Wasn't quite sold out, but we had a very large audience, probably about 1,700 people. Our experience at Joergensen is, if it is a more commercial type event, we can still draw large sold out audiences for those events. We're struggling a little bit more with the more culturally oriented events. But thanks to the support we receive from, for example, the Leonard Chamber Music Endowment, that combined with the audiences that we are able to attract for the more culturally oriented events, Joergensen is doing just fine. Yes, we keep striving to try to increase the attendance at all of our events, but it's a little slow going. It hasn't quite recovered to pre-pandemic levels yet, but I think we are trending in that direction.
Well,
Just taking a
Rodney,
little bit more time.
yeah, Rodney Rock, I want to thank you for joining us today. Rod programs a lot of fascinating stuff at Joergensen. You can get information on everything that they're presenting this winter and spring at joergensen.uconn.edu. And I want to thank your colleague, Renee, for sending me all the information about the upcoming season so that I can keep tabs and have you back on the program all the time.
Great. Well, we appreciate the opportunity and we thank you for your help.
Okay, we're going to take a quick break to acknowledge our underwriters. We'll be back with more Artsbeat. Peter Coles is our chief engineer. I'm Mark Auerbach. Don't go away.
Underwriting for Community Radio on WSKB is brought to you in part by Rockies. Over 30 convenient locations throughout Massachusetts, Rhode Island, New Hampshire, Connecticut, and Florida. One of the nation's largest ACE dealers. Expertise and great product selection in paint, hardware, lawn and garden. That's Rockies, rock solid service since 1926. On the web at rockies.com.
Hi, this is Harry Rock, host of Rock on Westfield every fourth Wednesday at 8 a.m. Tune in for my view of this place I call home.
Community Radio.
89.5 WSKB.
Live from Studio 120 at Westfield Technical Academy, this is WCPC Channel 15 at 89.5 FM, WSKB Westfield.
Welcome back to Artsbeat, everyone. I'm your host, Mark Auerbach. Peter Coles is our chief engineer. My guest this half hour has been on this program before. He is my pal, Jeffrey Dreisbach, who is a former actor. He's now works in the casting offices of McCorkle Casting. He has a podcast which has just surpassed 300 podcasts. It was kind of exciting. And he has ties to Western Mass. For a period of time, he kind of got off the track from acting and lived up in the hill towns in Western Mass, where he made artwork and furniture out of old wood from the forests. And I met Jeffrey when he decided to come out of the hill towns and do some arts work, and he managed and directed the Northampton Film Festival for a while before he ran back to New York. Jeffrey, it's always good to see you.
Hey, Mark, nice to see you. Yeah, I literally ran back to New York. You make me sound like I'm 110,000 years old.
No,
Oh,
no.
gosh.
Yeah, when we met, we were kids. I mean, I remember
Yes, you
when
were.
you chaperoned, when you produced that film festival, you had a chaperone and you had a curfew.
Yeah, I guess that's not quite true, but yes, it was an amazing time. It was such a pleasure to know you all these years. And, I read all of your reviews, and I love your Survivor Story series.
Thank you.
In particular, Evan Pappas is somebody that I know, and it was really a great interview that you did with him. I'm not trying to blow too much smoke your way, but I just wanted to congratulate you on the great work that you're doing.
Well, thank you so much, and I'm really thrilled that there will be a season 2 of Survivor Stories that will begin filming in the beginning of March. So
Congratulations, that's great.
it's been a wonderful experience. One of the things that might be of interest to you, you start on Broadway in a play called A Few Good Men, and one of our area community theaters, the Suffield Players, is presenting A Few Good Men, I believe at the end of January or early February. And of note in that production, the Springfield Symphony timpani player, Marty Kluger, plays one of the leads in that production. And he is a member of the Springfield Chamber Players, which I work with. And he and I are collaborating on a Broadway pops with the Springfield Chamber Players in April. So if you want to see a timpani player play the role of a soldier, or a lawyer. I can't remember what role he plays, but he's starring in A Few Good Men at the Suffield Players, and Jeffrey starred in it on Broadway.
Yeah, I played Kendrick, and I was in the original cast. So I was there from the very, very beginning. Not too shabby, when you're working like with Aaron Sorkin and Don Scardino directing. And the show was in Washington, D.C., then it moved onto Broadway, Music Box Theater. I did over 500 performances on Broadway with that show. And so congratulations to your friend that's going to be in it. It sounds amazing. And you know what's interesting to me is that play as a story still holds up. It still has a lot of references to today. It still just talks about absolute power corrupting absolutely. And so it's really very timely. And of course, Aaron Sorkin, there's no other writer quite like him. And so that was a real pleasure to have an opportunity to work with him in that amazing company. Stephen Lang did Jessup in the original production that we started in. But yeah, 500 performances later, two things happened to me. One is I was exhausted. And the second thing is that I had the worst haircut of anybody on the planet because I played a Marine. So I was shaved on the sides, and then I had this flat top. I looked like a Q-tip. And so that's when Pat McCorkle, she said, you know what, Jeff, you are uncastable right now because you look like a Q-tip. And so I said, what? And so she said, yeah, why don't you just come on in and help me out in the casting office? And that's sort of how our relationship got started. So I haven't looked back. You know, I loved my acting work. I did it for 20 years. I really did a lot of really interesting projects, half a dozen feature films. I did a soap opera for a while. So I really had a really great run. So I guess I'm saying that I'm not one of those actors who became embittered by acting and then turned into a casting director, because there are a few of those folks that are out there. That wasn't my story at all. I've enjoyed the casting work. I've been doing it now 12 years. Can you believe it?
Yeah. And how did the vlog or the podcast come together? What made you decide to do that?
I'm sure you can relate to this because I know you also teach. And I found that teaching for me filled that creative void that I felt after I stopped acting. Just being able to share my experiences with others, young students. I would get invited as a casting person. I would get invited to a lot of universities. I would go to a lot of showcases. And so I started doing some workshops, and especially during COVID, it was like I was a crazy person. And so I thought, you know what? I get very similar questions from a lot of students over the workshops and colleges and universities that I travel to. And so I thought, you know what, why not just do a podcast? Why not just answer some of those questions? You know, I thought it would be just kind of fun, but I never, ever had any idea it would turn into 350 episodes, 150,000 downloads of the podcast. I mean, beyond anything I could imagine. And what's amazing, I think, also is that I'm still coming up with things to talk about after 350 episodes. I still feel like there's stuff that I can cover. So my demographic, basically, Mark, is that it's for students or people who are trying to get or transition back into the profession if they've been away a while, or just students who are finishing their university training or their college training or conservatory training, sort of that transition of how to go from a student to professional. That is sort of my my angle, if you will.
It's funny, though, 3 years ago, I was asked to produce a series for the Arts Extension Service and Arts Hub of Western Mass for working artists and either performing or visual or graphic, everything from how to raise money to how to market and self-promote. And I asked you to join me and do a seminar on, and basically we talked about for everybody how to develop your elevator speech to describe what you can do or what your accomplishments are in 90 seconds or less, and how to present yourself at an interview and all of that. So a lot of the training that you do with actors and people in the theater community really translates to anybody that's in the job market, regardless of what their field of expertise might be.
I remember that very, very well. And I think we also spent some time talking about how to present yourself on Zoom, because actors are doing a lot of self-tape now. self-tape is not going to go away for actors, meaning that they have to put their audition on, shoot it on their cell phone in their living room or wherever, and then send it to the casting director. So first round auditions for actors now are more often than not done on self-tape. And so that relates so well to anybody who's auditioning or interviewing for a job. It's kind of the same, right?
Yeah.
And of course, that dreaded question that everybody gets is, tell me a little bit about yourself. And that question is still being asked. And it's so funny how people freeze up when they don't really have a plan on how to present themselves. So that's something that I just love being able to share with others. For actors, it's about how to, the best way to present yourself in an audition. And just for us regular folks, it's also just communicating using this camera. People hate being and seeing themselves on camera a lot of times.
And
a lot of people hate the way that they sound, you know?
I have a public relations company, and I've, if you want to call it, auditioned people to work on projects. And we've used Zoom. Zoom is a part of our lives now. And it's a difficult medium to master. I mean, anybody can go to a Zoom meeting, and people are very forgiving if your dog follows you behind, or you see somebody in the room and things like that. But there's still a way to present, to look at the camera, how to talk, how to project or not project, and it doesn't matter whether you're auditioning for a play or looking for a job. The first line now, after you send the resume, and it'll often say, include a 90-second video or a 2-minute video of what you can do.
Exactly right. And so I just wanted to throw a couple of tips, because these are actual.
Well, before you do,
go ahead.
tell people how they can access your podcast.
Oh, thank you. That's so nice. So it's called Casting Actors Cast. So think of Casting Actors, the podcast. So Casting Actors Cast. It is on any podcast provider. So whether it's iTunes or Spotify, wherever you get your podcast, just type in Casting Actors Cast. My ego is way too fragile to have guests on my show. So I end up just doing 20 minutes once a week. And of course, it's totally free. And it's on the Broadway Podcast Network now. I was invited to join the Broadway Podcast Network, and I'm thrilled that they asked me to join them. And so I'm among some amazing, talented people. But my niche is a little bit different than others in that this is much more educational, instructional oriented than anything else.
Do you consult with somebody as part of your work? If somebody said, "How can you coach me to be a better interviewee or to do a better audition?" Are you available for coaching?
I'm not, and just because of my time and my schedule between the podcast and the projects that we're casting now, I'm also an adjunct at a university, the Norwalk Conservatory of the Arts, and I've been teaching there in Connecticut for 2 years now. And I don't know if you're familiar with the Norwalk Conservatory of the Arts. It's a fantastic program. Danny George put this together. It's an accredited college that's providing 2 years degrees for musical theater as well as film and television students. And I'm in the film and television department. So once a week, I trek up to Connecticut. I love going up, by the way. And I instruct young people on how to do this professionally. So anyway, I got sidetracked with your
and I'm going to sidetrack again. Working with McCorkle Casting, Pat McCorkle is one of the best casting directors in the country and does everything from Broadway and film and television to regional theater. And you guys have a big connection with the arts in Western Massachusetts.
Boy, do we ever. We are excited to have, I guess we're entering our 26th or 27th season with Barrington Stage Company under Alan Paul. And I can't reveal next season, but I think you might be interested in knowing that. I hope I don't get into too much trouble here, but it looks like Camelot is going to be done this coming summer.
They actually announced that. They've announced
they did?
Camelot.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Oh, thank God. because I thought, because, you know, sometimes we have to sign a non-disclosure because, you know, just because of being fragile. So, yeah, we're happy to be joining Barrington Stage Company again for another season. Also, Connecticut Repertory Theater, their Nutmeg season is something we've done for several years. So we'll
that
be,
seems to be,
working with
that
them
has
as well.
not emerged from the pandemic. I don't
Yes.
believe. But they were doing some great musicals for a while there.
They sure were. And now it looks like they're trying to get it back. But this is a similar story to regional theaters across the country. Everyone seems to be really struggling financially. And, you know, some of these regional theaters that have these fantastic subscription audiences just ended up stopping at COVID. And so it's been really a slow, slogging it out kind of situation for a lot of the theaters that we've done some casting for. Smaller productions are being considered, you know, two-handers or, you know, one-man show kind of things. But my fingers are crossed that it's slowly going to be getting back. So I was happy to see the Connecticut Repertory Theater invited us to come back and start doing some work for them this coming summer.
That's great.
well.
I mean, Barrington Stage and Berkshire Theater Group, which are kind of anchor the north and the south part of Pittsfield, survived the pandemic beautifully with performances throughout the pandemic. And they're both thriving now. Shakespeare and Company and Chester Theater are doing very well. But the other theaters say audiences buy tickets at the very last minute. They're not selling out the way they used to, and they have no handle on whether they will sell out or not because people's theater going habits have changed. And
Absolutely right.
I think it goes all the way to Broadway. I mean, you can go to Broadway the week of a show a show that you want to see and get tickets, except for maybe one or two of the shows that are constant sellouts, and it didn't used to be that way.
That's exactly right. Also, the thing about Broadway now is that we're getting articles written about Hollywood saving Broadway with all of these Hollywood stars coming in and appearing on Broadway. But you know what the truth of the matter is? A lot of film is not being done. A lot of film production's not being done. So these actors are just desperate to get some kind of performance opportunities under their belt. And so, yes, we're happy to see George Clooney in a play here in New York. That's great. But it's not like the stars are saving Broadway. It's like we're doing the stars a favor by bringing them in because not all film actors translate to theater actors, if you know what I'm saying.
Exactly. I mean, there's been some stunt casting up here in Western Massachusetts and in Hartford, where you get to see a lot of work. And they'll bring in a big name who's a television big name and not a theater big name. And they often struggle to find their place on the stage.
That's right. And that's sort of the challenge for us in casting because we do theater, film, and television. We'll often get managers or agents who are kind of pitching their client. And that's great. That's always nice because our job as a casting director is to fulfill the vision of whatever that project is. But sometimes they don't necessarily have the stage chops. And it really does make a difference. Back to something that you were saying earlier, which I find is really, really important, really interesting, is the choice of material that these theaters are now having to deal with. Because you want to have a commercial enough production to bring people in, but at the same time, there's a level of artistic integrity that has to be met. And so finding that balance, I think, is going to continue for a little while yet. For example, we cast Contemporary American Theater Festival. This is in Shepherdstown, Virginia, and they do nothing but brand new plays with emerging playwrights. And they do it in a repertory style. So one actor will be in 3 different productions in a rotating rep situation. So it's very exciting theater. And these are all new productions. But you can imagine that because these are brand new plays, a lot of people are not coming into the theater. The only thing that makes Contemporary American Theater Festival different is it's always been that way. So you still have audiences that are core audience subscription folks that'll come to the stage, come to the theater no matter what.
Yeah.
But it really is a challenge, I think, for a lot of regional theaters right now, as well as all areas of the industry have kind of taken it on the chin, in my opinion, since the SAG strike last year.
Yeah. Was that the same theater that did Fever Dreams that came to TheaterWorks in the fall?
It certainly was.
What an incredible play that was.
Yeah, really amazing work. And we love our association with them because of the new work. Because you get a stack of material, of plays to go through and read. And then the challenge for casting is, of course, trying to find the talent that's going to serve all 2 or 3 of those productions. And so it's like it's a puzzle. And that's really kind of interesting. It's unlike anything else that we've done, really.
How often do you get to go to the theater? I mean, you're looking at your clients, you're looking at, potential clients and things like that. How many theater performances did you get under your belt last year?
Oh, certainly Pat is much more aggressive about seeing the projects. But sadly, you're right. We are not able to see everyone that we cast. We really try to make our presence known on opening night by sending them a video or sending them a card or a letter or something like that. So I would say I've seen maybe 14 or 15 productions last year. Pat, closer to 30 or 40. But don't forget, we're also working full time in casting. So it's really a challenge to meet the expectations of a lot of the regional theaters that we work for. But we do our best, let me just say this. We're not sitting home watching television.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It's like we're not very complacent about stuff, but we sort of have to go and put in our time where we believe it's necessary. But it certainly is hard, that's for sure.
How many people work at McCorkle?
So right now we have 4 plus an intern. And things are, and I'll be frank, things are very slow right now. It's sort of kind of wound down during this holiday stretch that we're in. But we've got 2 films that I'm able to talk about. Then we're also doing Agnes of God for Broadway is going to be a revival Broadway
How cool.
production that we're working on. So we're excited about that. What makes that pretty amazing, I think, is that Michael Lindsay Hogg, who directed the original Agnes of God for Broadway, is going to be directing this new production. So our fingers are crossed that that's going to be really, really good. So our staff is gearing up for these summer theaters, but it's also the film work that has slowed down quite a bit. And now it looks like it's getting just at the beginning of it, just the resurgence of that.
How long in advance? Let's use Barrington Stage as an example because so many of my viewers and listeners go there.
Yes.
They have not announced their 2025 season other than Camelot, but they obviously know what it is. How long in advance are you casting for the 2025 season before they announce it?
We'll start casting in January. We actually have requirements by Actors Equity Association to do open call auditions in New York and at Barrington Stage. So we do, for every production, you have to have what's called an EPA, Equity Principal Audition. So we have to kind of get that under our belt, and that's a way for us to see actors that might not otherwise get consideration. And then we start the submission process. That means that the release of what plays are going to be done are sent to agents and managers throughout the country. And then we start receiving material from actors through agents and managers. Then we make that decision. And we're in constant discussions with each of the directors of each of these productions during that time. So April and May, we're pretty much done. But when I say done, that doesn't mean we don't have last-minute replacements, which happen all the time. That's just an interesting thing post-COVID is that theaters are not required, but these really must consider having understudies ready to go. And that's kind of a new thing, and it's affecting budgets for theaters as well, just to throw that in there.
A very interesting experience with that this past summer at Chester Theatre. They were doing the American premiere of a British play called Big, Big Sky that was set to star their artistic director, James Barry. And James Barry got COVID 2 days before opening performances, and another actor stepped in to do the part, script in hand. And at press opening, it was this other actor, Joel Ripka, holding a script, which he was very discreet about, and gave a performance that could have knocked your socks off.
How wonderful.
It was absolutely an incredible performance.
So holding the script didn't really have an adverse effect for you in terms of...
It took place in a cafe, and the character was a reader, always poring over books. And most of the people didn't notice it, but because I work in the theater and knew that he was called in, I could see him referring to it, and it was close enough that I could see it was the script that he was working with. But it was a brilliant performance, and I've come to appreciate the work of standbys and understudies in our new realm of theater.
It's so important now, where before it wasn't like, there was that trooper mentality that if you have the flu, you went on. You got a cold, you go on. But since COVID, it's not the same. You can't have that kind of trooper mentality anymore. You just need to have safeguards in place by having understudies, that's for sure.
I don't know. I don't know if in saying this, I may think that we're both oldsters in the business. But when we did shows when we were younger, you went on, even if you had pneumonia, and you didn't think about just calling out. And it seems now, the last few times I've gone to Broadway, somebody's called out and there's an understudy, and I admire the understudies, but sometimes I wonder what happened to the discipline that we all had when we were starting out.
I couldn't agree more. It has changed. And I'm not sure I'm that happy about it. On the other hand, I believe that people should be taking care of themselves. So, you don't want to subject somebody to something dangerous. And of course, that would be terrible. But on the other hand, there was that kind of, like I said, trooper mentality where, the show must go on sort of attitude. And that adage doesn't get said a lot anymore, I don't think.
Here's a question I have for you that somebody asked me to ask you. When you were here in Western Massachusetts, you had kind of taken a hiatus from everything, and it was furniture making in the hill towns. Do you still craft furniture?
You know what? I do. And that's such a fun thing to do. I just needed to just take a complete break. So I just stopped any performing, and I wasn't interested in casting at that moment. And I had been making found wood things, like, for example, a tree that falls over, I would use the roots to make a table, that kind of thing. Or I would make a music stand out of a single sapling from a maple tree, using all of the branches. And so it was just kind of a fun, I don't know, there's a lot of actors who do woodworking, and I find that kind of interesting. And so I still have tools. I did make, and I still do make occasional pieces for friends and family, but it's not the business that I tried to do it. I did that for 7 years. And once you start doing the craft show circuit, it becomes a whole nother thing. And of course, since COVID hit, and this was 2008 when I stopped, people just didn't want to buy twigs anymore.
Exactly, yeah.
The whole craft show thing sort of ended when the economy took its nosedive. And so I still have the love of it. My book is still for sale. It's that kind of thing. Called Conversation Pieces Out of the Woods. So that's still, people are still buying the book. It's a kind of a picture book of all the work that I've put together. That's my third book, by the way. So, I love it. And that's maybe going to be one of those things I'll fall back on when this casting thing gets tiring.
Yeah, and I mean, the woods are still here, so come back to Western Massachusetts and take a tree home or two.
I think I might.
Yeah.
It's such a fun hobby, but I also love filling up my days with other creative endeavors. So I don't do it quite as much as I wish, but on the other hand, it's always something that I don't think you lose touch of that kind of work.
No, and it's very fulfilling to have
Yes.
some other creative outlet besides what you do in your day job.
Yep, absolutely right.
Jeffrey, we're out of time. I want to thank you for joining us today. I hope that if your travels to if Nutmeg Summer Theater comes back, or
Yes.
you're there, or at Barrington Stage, that we get to hang out a little bit.
100%. I'll make sure to reach out to you. And again, congratulations to all the good work that you're doing.
And
hello to everybody in Western Mass.
I will. And thanks for sharing all the info on your podcast and everything else. I hope people get a chance to listen to it, whether you're a theater person or not.
Thank you so very much.
Be well, Jeffrey. This
Take
wraps
care.
up this edition of Artsbeat. Peter Coles has been our chief engineer. I'm Mark Auerbach. We'll see you next week.
When you're in love, you are the loneliest. You're only half. When one is what you were, you're part instead of whole. When you're in love, you are the loneliest.
Sitting by your side as the day drifts by, seeing how you frown when you get impatient, helping you hold on to a moment that made you happy, hoping that you'll think what I say is right, wanting you to laugh at my unintended charm.
When you're in love, you're never satisfied. The thing you want is always out of reach. A need without a name. When you're in love, you're never satisfied. Sitting by your side as the day drifts by, watching how you try when I'm done with trying, making little plans that I know will make you happy, hoping when I tease that you'll put up a fight, wanting you to know all the funny things I am when I'm sitting by your side,
Seeing how you frown,
watching how you try,
hoping that you'll think what I say is right,
making little plans.
sitting by your side as the day drifts by. Now
I'm hoping that you feel all the things I feel, wishing that you want me to sit beside you, wanting now to learn all the things you are, waiting for a chance to invite you in my heart. Talking in a car in the afternoon, sitting by your side on a sunny day. When you're in love,
when you're in
you
love,
only have
the thing you want,
when you're in love, the